I'm bored. Let's watch The Critical Drinker. All right, so the title of today's video is Why Modern Movies Suck, They're Completely Forgettable. I feel like he's doing this because there's just not a lot to talk about, so we're back to doing like nostalgia outrage bait again, because that's kind of what his viewers want from his channel. Let's watch the video.
You can't handle the truth. I'll be back. You're gonna need a bigger boat. May the force be with you. I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. Go ahead, make my day. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Yo, Adrian, I did it. Now, when I read out those quotes, I made a point of not imitating the accents or the intonations, and I gave you no visual clues whatsoever to help you out. They came from a wide range of different movies from different genres, different decades and styles, so there's no common thread to pick up on that might help you out. But does any of that matter? Nope, because I'll bet that pretty much every one of you could name not just the movie they came from, but also the actors who said them, and probably picture the exact scene in your heads. Let's try another one, shall we? Luke Skywalker, Captain Kirk,
Man, he's
James
trying
Bond,
hard here.
Sarah Connor, Sherlock Holmes, Rocky Balboa, Bruce Wayne, Marty McFly, Indiana Jones, Forrest Gump, Hannibal Lecter. The moment I say those names, it instantly conjures up an image of that person in your mind, the actor that played them, the most iconic moments they took part in, and even the emotions that the character inspires. That right there, my friends, is the power of the cultural footprint. It's the ability of films to transcend the medium they started in and...
This is going to be fun. I have a feeling this video is going to be very, very fun to dismantle. But we'll see. Let's get there.
Become a living, breathing part of our culture, referenced and quoted and thought about by generation after generation. Here's the problem, though. Not a single one of them was created in the past 20 years. Fuck. Yeah, that's kind of worrying, isn't it? And before you start accusing me of cherry-picking my examples just to prove a point...
You are. It's 100% cherry-picking. But let's continue.
I can tell you that I looked up 6 different lists of the 100 best movie quotes of all time for this video, read every single one from start to finish, and not a single one belonged to a movie made after 2005.
Okay, so that's still cherry-picking. It's like survivorship bias. So like, list of all-time great quotes almost by definition favor lines that have had years or decades to like embed themselves in our culture. Newer films just haven't had enough time to do that. They need a little bit more time to cook. If you did a survey list of recent films, like, I don't know, last 5, 10, 15 years, I think there's probably some quotes you would hear. I would say something like, I am Iron Man, Wakanda forever, I volunteer as tribute. These are things that are culturally relevant, but they're not going to show up on best movie quotes of all time. Of all time. Because that's going to include things that are from like 50, 60 years ago, that have been around for a longer amount of time. So yeah, I mean, like, this is definitely cherry picking, like survivorship bias type shit.
Look up any list of iconic movie characters and I can pretty much guarantee they'll all be from 2010 or earlier, and even if they do exist in newer movies like the Marvel or DC universes, the characters themselves will have been created decades earlier in books, comics, or TV shows.
The same stuff applies here. It's just these characters have been around longer. Therefore, they've had more time in culture to become relevant to people remembering things. The same way you look at something nostalgically. Like, your whole channel is built off of this nostalgia bait stuff. That's the foundation of your channel, of your content.
What you're seeing today is just another iteration of something that was invented generations ago, just another meal made by someone else, reheated in the cultural microwave. One of the saddest emails I ever read was from a young subscriber of mine complaining that their generation doesn't really have anything to call their own. No unique cultural touchstone they can point to and say, see that? That was ours. That was our Star Wars, our Lord of the Rings, our rock and roll.
Those things were never ours when we were younger either, because we didn't know what they were going to become. That's the difference. Like, you're looking at something from a long time ago and seeing several decades of what that thing represented. Like, in hindsight, I talk about this a lot. These guys do a lot of hindsight conversation, a lot of hindsight reviewing. You're looking at something in the past that you could not have predicted is going to have the effect that it has now, and saying, well, the things that are coming out now will not have this effect 30 years from now. There's no way for you to know that. You don't have a crystal ball.
Everything they see and watch and listen to now is either a continuation of some old franchise or a remake of something that came out decades ago.
Again, this is hasty generalization. This ignores dozens of original concept stuff that's happened over the last 20 years. I mean, I'm going to try and think of some off the top of my head. Get Out is one. La La Land, Everything Everywhere All at Once. These are things that we might look back, 30 years from now and go, these were the big movies. These were the ones that everybody was talking about. But you're ignoring it because you're doing, again, a generalization fallacy. Let's continue.
And all of this got me thinking, wow, we're living in a bit of a cultural wasteland these days, aren't we? We're not really creating much of anything new or memorable anymore. We're just rehashing stuff that's already been done before, making copies of copies that gradually degenerate into mediocrity and failure. I mean, just take a look at the 3 big movies in theaters this month. Jurassic World, the 7th movie in the Jurassic Park franchise. Fantastic Four, the 3rd movie version of these characters in the past 20 years, based on a comic from 60 years ago. And Superman, the 3rd iteration in the past 20 years, not counting TV shows and video games of...
Well, the thing is that you guys attack anything new. So it's like these studios can't win for losing with you guys, right? If they do a newer character, like say Ironheart or Ms. Marvel, you attack them for doing that because you say they're trying to virtue signal. And it's all about DEI and all of this. So if they do that, you attack them. But now you're saying that they continue to use older characters and older IPs in their modern films, and that's also a problem. Do you understand? This is why when I say these guys don't offer solutions, they just don't. There's no solutions from these guys when it comes to this stuff. He's not offering any solution to the supposed problem. Therefore, he is just complaining to complain. There's no out on the other side of this. So all he's doing here is appealing to tradition. He's looking through the nostalgic lenses, saying, oh, what I had when I was growing up is much better than what you have now. This is literally grooming his base. That's what this is. It's a continued grooming of his base.
Of course, based on a comic from 80 years ago. I mean, don't get me wrong, they make money, that's for sure. Well, maybe not Fantastic Four, but you get my point. Jurassic World's on track to make $1 billion, and Superman will probably do okay as well, although even that's looking a bit shaky right now. But box office revenue isn't the same as cultural impact, and that is the big difference here. This time next year, in fact, fuck it, probably this time next month, nobody's even going to remember a single scene, character, or line of dialogue from Jurassic World.
Well, that's not the argument, though. You're not talking about next month. You're talking about movies that people remember decades later. So what you're doing is you are prejudging the success of something based on how it performs now. And we know that doesn't always apply. There's plenty of examples of films that underperformed at the box office over the years that have gone on to make tons of impact to culture. There's lots of movies. Go to Rotten Tomatoes or go search right now on Google and look up movies that were box office bombs that ended up being super important to the art form of filmmaking, of communities, of culture, becoming cult classics. There's tons of them, hundreds of them, if not more, that did not perform well at the box office. So there's no way you can tell me that just because something underperforms or isn't relevant a month from now, that movie's not going to be big 30 years from now. You don't know that, and I don't know that. This is you trying to appeal to your base yet again with just dumb fallacies.
Afterbirth. Shit, man, I can barely even remember it now. Nobody's going to be quoting or referencing James Gunn's Superman by James Gunn by the time it leaves theaters. They're the movie equivalent of a fast food meal, something to be consumed quickly and then forgotten about just as quickly, so that if it wasn't for the heartburn and the explosive diarrhea later in the day, you probably wouldn't be sure if you'd even eaten it.
It's just, his scripts are so disgusting. It's like purposely adding in disgusting shit, literally just to flavor up an otherwise unimportant, boring-ass video.
The Avatar movies are probably the peak example of all this. Each of them makes more money than a small African country, and the next one will be no different, but nobody ever talks about them. Nobody posts fan theories or recites their most famous lines or references iconic characters in other works because, well, there's nothing to reference.
Are you kidding? The first Avatar movie is still talked about today. It's still talked about in conversations. The imagery from that film is still shown today. There's jokes and humors around that movie today. The more recent one has only had a couple of years. There's entire communities around this film franchise. Like I'm just begging you guys, like seriously, stop listening to these folks. Stop listening to them. It's almost painful to just be so fucking ignorant on purpose because you think that your viewers are fucking stupid.
They're nothing but hollow spectacle, devoid of deeper meaning or substance, as pointless and empty as that hotel in North Korea with all the lights on the outside that's been sat unoccupied for 30 years. Even Avengers Endgame, arguably the single biggest movie event of all time, is nothing more than a footnote in film history at this point.
Is it? I mean, you guys always bring it up. It's like this is the bookend to Marvel. Like you guys talk about it anytime you talk about new modern Marvel films. You talk about how Endgame was the end of peak Marvel. It's always in the conversation. Literally, I just talked about Infinity War and Endgame a week ago. We're talking about which movie was better based on like just overall story and things like that. Like we've had conversations about this. Again, you guys stop listening to these fucks. Like, it's crazy.
Nobody talks about it anymore, except maybe to reference it as the turning point where the MCU started its downward plunge into abject shitty.
So they still talk about it. So they still talk, like, your criteria is nobody's talking about it except when they're talking about it. Fuck.
Yes. I guess part of the problem there is that we've been wowed by visual spectacles so many times now that it creates a kind of numbness in the audience. You're never really going to replicate the sheer impact of that first Star Destroyer in A New Hope, or the T-Rex attack in Jurassic Park, or the rain-soaked neon cityscapes of Blade Runner, because
So you're never going to replicate it, but you're holding them to the standard to replicate it. That's the video. That's your video here. They're never, so why even try? Just give up. Stop making films. Right? I mean, if there's no way to make these things again in any form, then why even make film again? These guys are just the most boring pockets of art on YouTube are these people that are unartistic, uncreative, and just fucking stupid.
we've seen it all before now. It might still be impressive, but it's rarely memorable. But films are more than just bright colours on screen. The most memorable characters and moments in film history are usually just regular old people in normal places, delivering lines that actually mean something because of good writing, without half the universe having to explode in the backgrounds. And we're just not getting them anymore. And it's not just films. It feels like every aspect of modern culture has been weirdly dulled and toned down and homogenized. I mean, come on, you must have noticed it yourself, even if it was only subconsciously. That weird feeling of inertia, of stagnation, like we're not really growing or advancing anymore. We're just...
No, you are telling your viewers to feel that way. That's what you're doing. You're telling your viewers this is how you should feel. You are cultivating that in your content.
Sort of continuing. Like butter scraped over too much bread, you might say. Try this. Pick any decade of the 20th century, and I reckon most people could probably identify it based on the clothes, the technology, the music, or the films.
Yeah, no shit. More appealing to tradition. Nostalgia fallacy shit. Of course, people are going to remember things that happened years ago after they're decades out. You are trying to apply something that just doesn't exist. Like where we're living right now, the modern era that we're living in is not going to uphold the same sort of nostalgic standard as something from like 20 or 30 years ago. It's just an impossible argument. It doesn't even make sense. This doesn't make sense.
Each one had its own unique identity, its own fads and fashions and zeitgeists, from the rock and roll of the 50s
and we're not
to the
going to
angst and
know what this
counterculture
one
of the
is
70s
until
to the
we're
rise
out
of
from
the
it.
internet in the 90s.
Oh
but
my
at some
fucking
point,
God.
probably around the late 2000s or the early 2010s, it all seemed to slow down and then, well, stop. There were no definable fashions anymore. Technology became iterative instead of revolutionary.
There's no definable fashions. Don't you guys always talk about how woke people dress, what color their hair is, the kind of stuff they do on the internet, the kind of movies and media they want, that they're changing everything to be more woke, that they're unsexying characters and stuff like that. These are all parts of what we're dealing with right now in the world. These are your words, not mine. So clearly there's something that's defining happening right now. It's clearly happening right now. In your faces. It's part of your business model. But you're going to sit here and say that nothing defining happens? That there's nothing memorable happening at the moment? This is slop. This is slop content. This is low effort slop content.
Pop music became homogenized covers of songs from a decade earlier, and the era of the remake and the reboot kicked off in Hollywood big time. We stopped moving forward and we began looking backwards, and it feels like we've been stuck in that loop ever since.
Are you fucking serious? Did you just say, hold on, I had to rewind this. Let's play this out again so I can make sure I heard exactly what he said here.
Homogenized covers of songs from a decade earlier, and the era of the remake and the reboot kicked off in Hollywood big time. We stopped moving forward and we began looking backwards, and it feels like we've been stuck in that loop ever since.
The channel that survives on nostalgia bait material, in the community that survives on nostalgia bait content, is accusing modern media, movies in particular here, why modern movies suck, of looking back too much. Isn't your entire video here talking about how great it was back in the day versus now? Isn't that the whole point of your video? So I'm not really sure how your criticism applies to everyone but yourself and your community. How does that criticism apply to everyone but yourself and your community? Let's continue.
And quite simply, that is not good for any of us. So where's it all heading? Are we all just circling the drain of cultural oblivion, or are we on the brink of a new golden age of enlightenment? And
this is a slippery slope fallacy, in case you guys are wondering. Circling the drain of cultural oblivion. Innovative storytelling is alive. It exists. TV shows like Stranger Things, Black Mirror, podcasts in some way, video games, indie games. VR stuff is pushing ahead in content. AI, as much as I dislike it, is pushing ahead in culture. So you're just looking at a handful of Hollywood blockbuster movies that you don't like, and you're making that seem like it's the whole ecosystem. And then you're also using the straw man argument as well when you're talking about things like Marvel and DC, because like, while their roots are in the comics, the MCU, let's talk about the MCU in particular. The MCU has created brand new shared characters in a shared universe with storytelling tropes of their own box office records, their own fandoms. They have things like Easter egg hunts, theorists, subcultures, communities like that. Like, there is a cultural footprint. And it's kind of different from what we remember growing up because it's online instead of talking about it in the movies. Like, we would go out, my friends and I would go out to the movies, and we would watch movies, and then we'd stand outside the movie for about 20 or 30 minutes, and we'd talk about the movie right in front of the movie theater, and we'd see other groups of people doing the same thing. That doesn't really happen anymore. Lots of things that me and my friends would talk about after the movie is over now exist on the internet and podcasts and things like that. That's where you're going to find those communities. But when you live in an echo chamber like yours, where you are only willing to go as far as you need to go to turn a coin, when you're only willing to go that far and not engage with other people, not listen to what other people are saying, and you have to fill a quota because you're stuck in a corner with the kind of content you make, this is where you end up. This is where you end up in the fandom, is in this space. So many double standards, so much hypocrisy, so many fallacies in here. It's ridiculous.
Progress. Well, for my own sanity, and yours I suspect, I want to believe in the latter. I hope that what we're seeing now is the tail end of a cultural era that's been kept on life support way beyond its natural time by corporate greed, laziness, and risk aversion. A lot of the dusty old franchises that our parents' generation grew up on and we've been clinging to like comfort blankets for decades are reaching the end of their cultural relevance now, mostly because of horrendous...
Coming from the same group of people that hang on to their blankets for a living. Tell you to hang on to your blankets for a living. It's real smart critical drinker.
It's mismanagement and creative retardation, but what the fuck? Ultimately, it was gonna happen anyway no matter what. Hollywood's own incompetence has just sped up the process. I think we're reaching that tipping point now, and maybe I was wrong at the beginning when I described the modern landscape as a cultural wasteland. Maybe it's more like a cultural dam that's been holding back the flood for too long. The cracks are starting to appear, and sooner or later, it's gonna burst. And if that's the case, it'll be interesting to see what's left after the floodwaters recedes.
So, we're gonna stop there. This entire monologue rests on selective memory, nostalgia bias, failure to take into account how culture exists and thrives across many platforms and forums and podcast groups, typical online communities that build themselves organically. I mean, you could even count places like Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So you might not see them on merch, like t-shirt in a mall, but they're all over the internet, everywhere. Again, fandom forums, playlist, streaming queue, VOD, all of these places. That's where you're going to see this. Everything that was compartmentalized when we were growing up is now spread out everywhere. And the fact that you have to sort of create this narrative in order to feel comfortable about your own biases says a lot more about you as a person consuming media than someone creating content for people to engage in. This video exists because every year or so, you have to make another video saying the same dumb stuff. And your viewers eat it up because they believe you are a lot smarter than you actually are. This video is just full of fallacy arguments. It's full of like appeals to tradition, straw mans, false equivalencies. There's just so many things in it that are wrong. And your viewers will not call you out on it because they don't even see it for what it is.